4 days. That is all that stands between Lewis Hamilton and the one race he has won more than any human being in the history of this sport. Silverstone, his home circuit. The track where he has finished on the podium 12 times in a row and stood on the top step 9 times, more wins at a single venue than any driver who has ever lived. And he arrives there in a red Ferrari that 3 days ago in Austria was losing 0.6 of a second in a straight line. Not in the corners, not on the tyres, but in a straight line, on the one part of a lap a Formula One car is supposed to do in its sleep. That was Austria, on the 28th of June. By the 5th of July, Hamilton has to take that exact car down the hangar straight at Silverstone, one of the longest full-throttle runs anywhere on the calendar, against the silver Mercedes that walked away from him every single time the road went quiet and fast. So when word starts coming out of Maranello that Ferrari is bringing something to Britain, a lower drag answer built for precisely this kind of circuit, the question writes itself. Is it the fix? Or is it a bandage stretched over a wound the real cure cannot reach for another 2 months? And 0.6 is the number quietly terrifying Maranello right now, because it is a number the timing screens never showed you. On paper, Austria looks like a quiet Ferrari Sunday. Russell wins from pole. Antonelli takes 3rd, so Mercedes put 2 cars on the podium, while the best a Ferrari can manage is 5th. That is Hamilton more than 25 seconds behind the winner, with Leclerc trailing even further back, a midfield car on an off weekend, the screens say. The screens are lying. Because the car is not slow in the way 5th place suggests. It is slow in the one place a great chassis cannot save you, down the straights. Every time Hamilton comes out of a corner with a Mercedes ahead, he has the grunt to stay with them for the first stretch. Then the road keeps going, and the silver car just keeps pulling away. That is the problem still sitting in the Ferrari today, and it is the exact problem Silverstone is built to expose. The numbers from Austria are uglier than 5th place suggests. On Friday, in the speed traps, Hamilton and Leclerc are clocking 323 km per hour. That sounds fast. It is fast. But it puts both Ferraris a full 5 km per hour down on Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes, and 2 down on Russell. 5 km per hour does not sound like much until you remember it is happening at the end of every straight, on every lap, for the entire race. It compounds. And the deeper Ferrari looked, the worse it got. On the run down to turn 4, the longest pull on the lap, Ferrari is routinely giving up around 20 km per hour to the cars in front by the braking zone. 20. Think about what that means for a driver. You can be quicker through the corner, you can carry more speed at the apex, brake later, rotate the car better, do everything right with your hands and your feet. And then the straight arrives, and it is all handed straight back, plus interest. You spend the whole lap clawing, and the car spends the whole straight refunding it. And it costs you more than lap time. It costs you the ability to race at all. A deployment deficit this size is an overtaking nightmare, because Formula One passes are made on the straights, in the braking zones, with a run on the car ahead. If your car runs out of push exactly where you need to make the move, you do not get the move. You sit there, half a length short, lap after lap, watching a slower car you should be able to walk past, stay perfectly out of reach. That is the trap Hamilton spends his entire Austrian afternoon in. The pace to close, never the punch to pass. That is not a setup problem. You cannot dial that out with a different wing angle on Saturday morning. That is the engine. And specifically, it is not even the part of the engine most fans assume. And this is the part Hamilton himself puts his finger on. After Austria, he is asked the obvious question, is the Ferrari just down on power? And his answer is sharper than that. In his words, when you are running with these guys, it is deployment. It does not necessarily feel like power, because when you come out of the corner, it feels like you have got the grunt. It is just deployment at the end. Ours tails off. And then he pointed straight at Mercedes. Particularly compared to them, he said. They just keep going. That is the whole problem in 2 sentences. It is not that the Ferrari has no power. It is that the Ferrari runs out of the electrical side of its push before the straight is finished, while the Mercedes is still feeding. The grunt is there at the exit. It is gone by the braking board. The engine tails off exactly where the lap is decided. And Hamilton is not the only driver who has noticed. The one who notices it loudest is sitting in the car beating him. Antonelli, the teenager leading the entire World Championship, says he can see the Ferraris ahead of him deploying so weirdly, so weirdly. When the kid in the fastest car on the grid is studying your energy traces from behind and calling them strange, you do not have a hidden weapon. You have a tell. Everyone in the paddock could see exactly where Ferrari was hurting because the car was advertising it on every straight in plain sight. And it was not just Hamilton's car. Leclerc, in the other Ferrari, was fighting the identical problem, which is the clearest possible proof that this is not a driver issue or a one-off setup mistake. Two cars, two very different drivers, the same loss at the end of the same straights. When both sides of a garage are slow in exactly the same place, the answer is never the driver. The fault is in the machine underneath them. And the machine doing the beating made the contrast stark. The Mercedes this year has been the class of the field on precisely these kinds of circuits, an engine that keeps pulling when others fade, wrapped in a car so settled that a teenager in his sophomore season is leading the championship in it. Ferrari is not losing to a freak result. Ferrari is losing to the best package on the grid, on the exact terrain that package is built to dominate. You would think someone at Maranello would have seen this coming. They did. They have known about this deficit since the engines were first benchmarked this season, and the number behind it is genuinely shocking. When the FIA assessed the new power units for this era, it ruled that one engine was the benchmark, the one everyone else gets measured against. And it was not Mercedes. It was not Ferrari. It was Red Bull, the team building its own engine for the very first time, the engine nobody outside their factory expected to lead. The newcomer, the project everyone assumed would stumble in its first year, set the standard the established giants now have to chase. Red Bull disputed even being given that status. Plenty of the paddock blinked at it. But the ruling stood, and it triggered a mechanism that reshaped the whole development year. Any manufacturer judged to be more than 4% behind that benchmark was allowed to bring extra upgrade tokens to catch up. Ferrari came in more than 4% down. By some accounts, inside the sport, closer to 6 or even 8% off the leading internal combustion engine. That deficit bought Ferrari 2 of those tokens. Mercedes, sitting in the milder band, got one. 2 tokens sounds like a lifeline. It is also a confession. You do not get handed 2 catch-up upgrades unless you are a long way back. Ferrari did not earn those tokens with clever lobbying. They earned them by being slow. And the governing body put it in writing. And the first of those 2 upgrades is already on the car in Austria. This is Ferrari's big moment. The debut of the new internal combustion development. The part that is supposed to start closing the gap. So how big is the step? Ferrari's own power unit director, Enrico Gualtieri, tells everyone before the weekend not to get excited. The update they are bringing to Spielberg, he says, is a relatively minor one. Relatively minor. That is the team's own engine boss, managing expectations down to the floor, on the very upgrade meant to be the answer. And then the car goes out, and loses 6/10 in a straight line anyway. So that is the wound. Now here is what Ferrari is doing about it for Silverstone, and it tells you everything about how this fight really works. Ferrari is not bringing the engine fix to Britain. The real one, the second and far bigger of those 2 tokens, a redesigned turbocharger aimed squarely at this deployment problem, is not ready. It cannot be rushed. A change that deep needs roughly 2 months of reliability running before anyone dares put it in a race car, because if the new unit fails in a Grand Prix, it is not just a lost weekend. It is grid penalties that can wreck the entire back half of the season. So Ferrari has openly accepted it will not appear until after the summer break, most likely at Zandvoort or at Monza, in front of their own fans in September. The cure for the straight line loss is real. It is coming. It is just not coming to Hamilton's home race. What Ferrari can bring to Silverstone is the other lever: aerodynamics. If you cannot make the engine push harder at the end of the straight, you can at least make the car cleaner through the air, so it needs less push to reach the same speed. Ferrari has been preparing exactly that: a lower downforce, lower drag configuration tailored for the fast, open circuits like Silverstone and Spa, with refinements to its rear wing concept expected across these coming races. Trim the drag, free up the top end, and you claw back some of what the deployment is costing you. On a circuit defined by long full throttle stretches, a low drag package is the most direct answer Ferrari has available right now. And the timing of all this is almost cruel. Of every track on the calendar where Ferrari could be forced to show up with the aero patch instead of the engine cure, the schedule has handed them Silverstone. And it gets worse. Because of how the weekend is built, Britain is a sprint round. That means 1 single hour of practice, one before the cars are locked into Parc Fermé and the team has to commit. On a normal weekend, you get 3 practice sessions to understand a new package, to learn how a low drag wing behaves, to chase a balance. Here Ferrari gets 60 minutes to introduce an aero change, learn a circuit that punishes its weakness, set up for a sprint and qualify, all at once. For a team still trying to understand its own car, that is the harshest format on the calendar, arriving at the worst possible moment. It also raises the cost of getting it wrong. A sprint weekend puts points on the table twice, on Saturday and on Sunday, which sounds like an opportunity until you remember Ferrari is the team most likely to qualify out of position with a straight-line deficit on a track full of straights. Get the one practice hour wrong, miss the balance on a brand new aero package, and you do not just lose a Sunday. You hand away points across 2 races worth of running before the weekend has properly begun. For a team chasing from 46 back, doubling the number of chances to lose ground is not a gift, it is a risk multiplier. Silverstone itself is not a power circuit in the obvious point and squirt way that Austria is. It is a high-speed sweeper of a track, a place where maggots and Becketts and Kops reward a car that is planted and confident in the fast stuff. And that is real good news for Ferrari, because the chassis, the part of this car that is not broken, is strong in exactly those corners. But Silverstone hides a trap. In between those glorious sweeps sit the long runs. The blast down to Stowe, the Wellington straight into Brooklands. And, above all, the hangar straight, a long, full-throttle stretch where the car is simply asked to keep accelerating and accelerating with nothing to hide behind. That is the deployment test. Those are the exact stretches of tarmac that expose Ferrari in Austria, recreated here, 3 or 4 times a lap, right under the eyes of a home crowd that came to watch one man win. And the drivers know it. They have said so out loud. Leclerc, looking ahead from Austria, did not pretend. When he thinks about Silverstone, he said, "It certainly will not be easy, because there are plenty of long straights there as well, and the same issue will appear again at the end of every straight." The same issue. Again. His own words. Hamilton said the same thing in his own way, with that mix of love and dread only a home race brings. Silverstone is next, he said, and it is lined with long straights, which unfortunately plays right into the car's current weakness. But hopefully, he added, the car will be in a bit of a nicer place there. Hopefully. Even Vasseur, the team principal who spends his life selling belief, named it flatly. First, he said, we have some tough races ahead, like Silverstone, with the long straights. When the driver, the second driver, and the boss all independently point at the same stretch of road before the cars have even arrived, that is not nerves. That is a team telling you exactly where it expects to get hurt. If this breakdown is helping you understand the fight Ferrari is in, and not just the result on Sunday, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. This channel goes deep on the real engineering story behind every race weekend, the part the broadcast skips, and there is a lot more of it coming through this title run. Subscribe and stay with it. So why bring the low drag wing at all if the straights are going to bite regardless? Because a wing buys you something the engine fix cannot buy you yet, time. The aero adaptation is not the cure. It is the thing that keeps Ferrari in the conversation until the cure arrives. Trim enough drag and maybe the 20 km/h loss becomes 10. Maybe 5th becomes 3rd. And if the chassis is strong enough through Becketts and the weather turns, 3rd turns into something nobody is predicting. A patch does not have to fix the problem. It only has to keep you close enough to strike when everything else lines up. And there is a price to it, which makes the gamble even sharper. Trimming a wing for the straights means taking downforce out of the car, and downforce is exactly what you want, through maggots, Becketts and Kops, the fast corners that make Silverstone special and that suit Ferrari's chassis best. So the team is walking a tightrope. Take off too much wing to survive the hangar straight, and you blunt the one advantage you actually have in the corners. Leave too much on, and the straights punish you on every lap. There is no clean answer. Only a least bad compromise, found in a single hour of practice. But make no mistake about what the patch is and is not. A lower drag wing reduces how much push the car needs. It does not give the power unit more electrical energy to deploy down the straight. The actual disease, the tail-off that Hamilton described and Antonelli mocked and Gualtieri quietly admitted, lives in the engine, and the medicine for it is sitting in a dyno room in Maranello, waiting out 2 months of reliability checks before it is allowed anywhere near a race. The wing is what Ferrari can do this weekend. The engine is what Ferrari needs to do this season. Those are 2 very different timelines, and Silverstone falls in the gap between them. And that gap does not close at Silverstone. What comes after is worse. Spa, another of the great power circuits, with the long climb up to Leclerc that has embarrassed underpowered cars for decades. Then the summer break. Only after that, at Zandvoort or Monza, does the real engine step finally arrive. Which means Ferrari's effectively staring down a run of straight-line heavy weekends, knowing the one thing that would truly help them is locked away until September. Every point dropped on a straight between now and then is a point the team has quietly accepted it might not be able to defend. that is a heavy thing to carry into your driver's home race. Because this is the whole story of Ferrari's year so far. A car that is, in raw potential, more than a match for anyone, dragged backward by a power unit the FIA itself officially ranked among the slowest of the manufacturers, and held together in the meantime by aerodynamics, strategy, and the sheer quality of the two drivers in the seats. They are second in the constructors' standings on 204 points, but 98 behind a Mercedes team that has not had to fight its own car all year. In the drivers' fight, Antonelli leads on 171, Russell sits on 131, and Hamilton is third on 125, already 46 points off a teenager in the other team's car. 46 points, this early, is not a deficit you erase with one good Sunday. It is a deficit you erase by stopping the losses, and those losses are happening at the end of straights. And the stakes are bigger than one championship. This is supposed to be the season Ferrari arrives. A new era of regulations, a clean sheet of paper. Hamilton brought in to chase a title nobody at Maranello has won in a generation. Instead, the team is second on the road and second in the standings, kept there not by the thing it built, but by the talent it hired and the cleverness of its strategists. A team in that position cannot afford to write off the fast circuits and wait for September. Every weekend, the deficit goes unanswered, the questions get louder, and the patience of a fan base that has waited this long gets thinner. Silverstone is not just a race, it is a referendum on whether this project is going anywhere. Which brings it back to the man, and to the place, and to the reason this particular weekend matters more than the math says it should. Because for all of that, Silverstone is the one circuit on Earth where you do not bet against Lewis Hamilton. 9 wins here. Nobody in the entire history of Formula One has won a single Grand Prix more times than Hamilton has won this one. He took that record off Michael Schumacher, and he has stretched it to a place no one else is close to. He has been on the podium at his home race 12 times in a row, every single time since this era of the sport began over a decade ago. He has not finished a race at Silverstone off the top 3 in his entire hybrid-era career. This is not a track he likes, this is a track he owns. And there is one more card in his hand, the one Ferrari is quietly praying for: the British weather. Silverstone in July does what it wants, and the current forecasts already carry the threat of rain across the weekend. Hamilton in the wet at Silverstone is one of the most ruthless combinations the sport has ever produced, and a wet track does something beautiful for a car with a straight-line problem. It throws the whole question out. When grip vanishes and everyone is feeling for the road, deployment deficits stop mattering, and car control starts deciding everything. A 6/10 straight-line gap means nothing if half the field cannot get the power down at all. Rain is the great equalizer, and the man in the red car has spent 20 years being the last one standing when the sky opens over Northamptonshire. This is also only Hamilton's second British Grand Prix in Ferrari red. Last year he arrived as a newcomer in the team, still learning a new car, a new garage, a new way of working. This year he arrives knowing the car intimately, including knowing exactly where it will hurt him, which is its own kind of advantage. A driver who understands precisely why he is slow on the straight can build a whole weekend around hiding it, leaning on the chassis, nailing the strategy, putting the car in the one place where its weakness cannot be punished. If anyone alive can drag a flawed Ferrari onto the Silverstone podium in front of a home crowd roaring his name, it is the 9-time winner who has never once left this place disappointed. So here is where it stands, 4 days out. Ferrari arrives at Hamilton's home race with the wrong fix. Not no fix, the wrong one. A clever low-drag aero adaptation that targets the symptom, brought to a circuit built to expose the disease, while the real engine cure waits in Maranello for a September debut that will come far too late to save these points. The team knows it, the drivers have said it, the numbers from Austria scream it. And in 4 days, on the hangar straight, in front of his own people, the most successful driver this circuit has ever seen will find out whether a wing and a wet sky are enough to beat a problem the engineers could not fix in time. 0.6 of a second. That is where this whole story began. And on the 5th of July, on the longest straight at the track he has conquered 9 times, we find out whether Ferrari closed the gap, or whether Silverstone just made it impossible to hide. If you want to see what happens when the lights go out, and the full breakdown of whether Ferrari's gamble worked, subscribe now and turn on notifications. You will not want to miss it.